Remember when fashion influencers told you that a Birkin was better than a 401k? That a limited edition Chanel would appreciate faster than stocks? Well, if you bought into that advice, I have some uncomfortable news for you. The era of the investment bag is officially over, and thousands of luxury buyers are learning this lesson the hard way. The golden age of investment bags. For nearly 2 decades, luxury handbags operated under a simple promise: buy now, profit later. The math seemed bulletproof. A Hermès Birkin purchased in 2010 for $8,000 could fetch $25,000. By 2020, Chanel raised prices so predictably that buyers treated each increase as a guaranteed return. Limited editions sold out in minutes, only to appear on resale platforms at double the retail price within weeks. This wasn't just hype. Between 2000 and 2020, certain luxury handbags genuinely outperformed the S&P 500. A study by Bag Hunter found that Hermès bags had an average annual return of 14.2%, beating both gold and the stock market. Wealthy collectors began treating handbags like alternative assets, storing them in climate-controlled safes alongside watches and fine art. The resale market exploded, with platforms like Rebag, Vestiaire Collective, and The Real facilitating billions in transactions. But here's the question that should have been asked all along: what happens when everyone believes the same investment thesis? The crash nobody saw coming. The cracks started appearing around 2023, but by 2025, they'd become canyons. Resale values began plummeting across the board. That coveted Lady Dior that held 80% of its value, now it's lucky to fetch 50%. The Gucci Dionysus that was timeless, down 60% from retail. Even Hermès, the supposedly bulletproof brand, saw its secondary market soften, with Birkins sitting unsold on consignment for months. The numbers tell a brutal story. According to recent resale market data, the average luxury handbag now loses 30 to 40% of its value the moment you walk out of the store. Compare that to 2019, when premium pieces held 70 to 85% of retail value. The resale platform Rebag's Claire Index, which tracks brand value retention, has shown consistent declines across nearly every luxury house since 2023. So what happened? How did a seemingly stable alternative asset class collapse in just a few years? Oversaturation, when exclusivity becomes ubiquitous. The first culprit is simple math. Luxury brands got greedy. In their pursuit of quarterly growth, they flooded the market with inventory. Chanel now produces roughly 450,000 handbags annually, compared to 300,000 a decade ago. Louis Vuitton, once selective about distribution, now operates over 460 stores worldwide, each pumped full of merchandise. This strategy worked brilliantly for shareholders, driving LVMH to become one of the world's most valuable companies. But it destroyed the fundamental equation that made these bags investments in the first place: scarcity. When your local mall has 3 stores selling Gucci and every influencer owns the same limited edition piece, exclusivity evaporates. The resale market became glutted. Thousands of bags that owners expected to appreciate instead sat in closets, depreciating. The secondary market platforms are now drowning in inventory. Vestiaire Collective lists over 100,000 handbags at any given time. The Real's luxury handbag category grew by 400% between 2020 and 2025, but buyer demand grew only 80%. When supply vastly exceeds demand, prices crater. The dupe revolution. While luxury brands were mass-producing exclusivity, another force was undermining their value proposition, the rise of indistinguishable dupes. We're not talking about obvious Canal Street knockoffs anymore. Modern dupe culture operates in a sophisticated grey area, producing bags that capture the aesthetic of luxury pieces at 5% of the cost. Brands like Quince, Italic, and countless others use the same factories, similar materials, and nearly identical designs to create alternatives that the average person cannot distinguish from the real thing. A $3,000 Loewe puzzle bag has a $90 alternative that uses quality leather and hardware. A $5,500 Bottega Veneta, yes, Jody? There's a $120 version that's shockingly close. Social media accelerated this trend. TikTok hashtags like #DHgate and #designer dupes have billions of views, with influencers openly celebrating their ability to achieve the luxury look without the luxury price. The psychological barrier that once made carrying a fake shameful has dissolved. Gen Z and younger millennials view it as financially savvy rather than morally questionable. This fundamentally changes the calculation for buyers. If the goal was always to signal status and taste, and if a $100 bag accomplishes that just as effectively as a $3,000 bag to 95% of observers, why pay for the real thing? And if you do pay for the real thing, you certainly can't expect it to hold value when convincing alternatives are everywhere. The experience economy strikes back. Perhaps the most significant shift is cultural. The generation entering peak spending years doesn't worship handbags the way millennials did. They've watched influencers hawking luxury goods go into debt for the content. They've seen the environmental cost of fashion excess, and they've recalibrated what actually brings satisfaction. Research from Eventbrite and Harris Poll consistently shows that younger consumers prioritize experiences over possessions. They'd rather spend $3,000 on a trip to Japan than on a handbag that sits in their closet. The pandemic accelerated this shift. When everyone was stuck at home, that Gucci bag gathering dust in the corner became a monument to wasted money, not a treasured investment. This isn't just anecdotal. Luxury travel bookings are at all-time highs, while luxury goods sales have plateaued or declined. Concert tickets, fine dining, adventure tourism. These are the new status symbols. An Instagram post from Patagonia or at an exclusive restaurant generates more social capital than a handbag photo, which now reads as dated or try hard. The values have shifted too. Sustainability matters to modern consumers in ways that directly contradict luxury fashion's business model. How can you justify a $4,000 leather bag when you're concerned about carbon footprints and ethical production? The cognitive dissonance is increasingly difficult to resolve, especially when the investment narrative has been exposed as largely false. The sustainability awakening. Speaking of sustainability, it's become impossible to ignore the environmental catastrophe of luxury fashion. The industry produces 92 million tons of textile waste annually. Leather production is resource-intensive and often linked to deforestation. Even vegan leather alternatives are typically just plastic that will sit in landfills for centuries. Consumers are connecting these dots. Luxury brands try to respond with sustainability initiatives, but they ring hollow when the core business model depends on planned obsolescence and constant consumption. Chanel releases new collections 6 times a year. How is that sustainable? The entire concept of an investment bag encourages hoarding and excess. This awareness is particularly acute among younger buyers. They've grown up with climate change as an existential threat, not an abstract concern. Spending thousands on a handbag made from exotic animal skins feels increasingly indefensible. The social media backlash against conspicuous consumption has real teeth. luxury buyers face genuine criticism for their purchases in ways that didn't exist a decade ago. So why did the investment bag phenomenon collapse in 2025 to 2026 specifically, rather than earlier or later? The answer lies in a perfect storm of converging forces. First, the economic environment shifted. Higher interest rates made actual investments more attractive. Why tie up $10,000 in a handbag with uncertain resale value when you can get 5% risk-free in Treasury bonds? The opportunity cost became impossible to ignore. Second, the resale platforms reached critical mass. When eBay dominated, information asymmetry allowed sellers to command premium prices. But with sophisticated platforms providing transparent pricing data, buyers realized that resale values were far lower than promised. The truth became unavoidable. Third, social media trends moved faster than brand narratives. Luxury houses spent decades building the investment piece story, but TikTok can dismantle it in weeks. The velocity of cultural change now exceeds the speed at which legacy brands can adapt. Finally, we hit a tipping point of market saturation combined with dupe quality. It's not that any single factor killed investment bags. It's that all of these pressures converged simultaneously, creating a cascade effect that brands couldn't control. What this means for luxury brands. Luxury houses are facing an existential crisis. Their 20th century playbook, controlled scarcity, heritage narratives, and price increases as value signals, no longer work in a transparent, digitally connected market. Some brands are retreating to genuine exclusivity. Hermès has actually reduced production and made Birkins even harder to obtain, betting that true scarcity will preserve value. Early data suggest this might work, but it requires sacrificing growth, which public markets punish. Others are leaning into accessibility, essentially admitting they're premium fashion brands rather than investment-grade luxury. This is probably more honest, but it destroys the aspirational premium that allowed them to charge extraordinary markups. A few are attempting to reinvent the model entirely. Loro Piana is emphasizing quiet luxury and material quality over logos. Bottega Veneta tried to exit social media to create mystique. These experiments are fascinating but unproven. What's clear is that the old model is broken. Brands can no longer promise that their products are investments while simultaneously mass-producing them. The market has called their bluff. Going forward, luxury handbags will be what they always should have been. Expensive accessories you buy because you love them, not financial instruments. The new status symbols. As the investment bag era ends, what's replacing it? Status hasn't disappeared. It's just morphing into forms that better align with contemporary values. Knowledge and expertise are the new luxury. Being able to discourse intelligently about wine, art, architecture, or cuisine signals more than a logo ever could. The rise of subscription services, masterclasses, and cultural experiences reflects this shift. People want to be interesting, not just appear wealthy. Craft and provenance matter more than brand names. Consumers are gravitating towards small batch producers, artisans, and heritage techniques. A handmade bag from a Japanese craftsman you discovered through deep research carries more cachet than a mass-produced designer piece. Flexibility and experience have become ultimate status symbols. The ability to work remotely from anywhere, to take spontaneous trips, to have time for hobbies, these signal a kind of wealth that handbags never could. A packed passport beats a packed closet. Even within fashion, the emphasis has shifted. Instead of logo-covered pieces, the aesthetic has moved toward quiet luxury, high-quality items without obvious branding. The people who know, know. Everyone else doesn't need to. The financial reality check. Let's do some uncomfortable math. If you bought a $5,000 Chanel bag in 2020 expecting it to appreciate, it's now worth roughly $2,500 on the resale market. You've lost $2,000 or 50% of your investment. If you'd put that $5,000 in an S&P 500 index fund instead, it would be worth approximately $8,000 today. The opportunity cost of your investment bag is $5,000. Scale that across a collection, and the numbers become devastating. The average luxury handbag collector owns 8 to 12 pieces worth $30,000 to $50,000 at retail. At current resale rates, that collection's liquidation value is $15,000 to $25,000. That's a net loss of $25,000 or more, the price of a car or a down payment on a house. The influencers and YouTubers who promoted investment bags have gone notably quiet about their own portfolios. Some have pivoted to videos about de-influencing and conscious consumption, conveniently forgetting their previous content. Others continue promoting bags but have dropped the investment language, now framing purchases as treating yourself rather than building assets. The financial reality is harsh. Luxury handbags are depreciating consumer goods, not investments. They belong in the same category as cars, electronics, and jewelry. Things you buy for personal enjoyment, fully expecting to lose money. The death of the investment bag isn't a tragedy, it's a correction. For too long, luxury brands and resale platforms sold a fantasy that didn't hold up to scrutiny. They convinced consumers that fashion could be financial planning, that consumption was investment, that buying more was building wealth. The truth is simpler and more liberating. Handbags are accessories. They should be purchased because they bring joy, suit your style, or serve a functional purpose. Not because you think they'll make you money. The investment bag era is over. What comes next has the potential to be far more meaningful, sustainable, and authentic. And that, ultimately, is worth more than any Birkin ever was. So tell me, do you think the investment bag era is over? And which bags do you think will rise above? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found value in this video, you're gonna love this next one.